Welcome to the Fishbowl with Jade, where we put on our scuba gear and take a deep dive beneath the surface. And today we're stepping into something we've all seen, maybe even experienced, but don't always unpack the way people share their struggles, especially on social media. Because somewhere along the line, support, visibility, and attention started to blend together, and now it can be hard to tell the difference between someone who genuinely needs support and someone who has learned that struggle gets them seen. And before we go deeper into this, I want to be clear about something because in this space, we're not here to judge people. We're not here to call anyone out or make anyone feel exposed. This is a space where we talk about things we all see, things we may not always understand, and sometimes things we may even recognize in ourselves. Because the goal isn't to label behavior, it's to understand it, to get to the root of why people do what they do, so we can move with more awareness, more clarity, and a little more grace. Because if we're being honest, none of us are completely outside of the patterns we're talking about. We're just learning how to recognize them. Because you've seen it. The posts that say, please pray for me, or keep us in your prayers, but no context, no follow up, no conversation. And when you reach out to check on them, they're gone, no response, no engagement. And it leaves you wondering, was this about support or was this about being acknowledged? Because sometimes, if we're honest, it's not that people want help, they want to be seen needing help. And then there's another layer to this, the way some people connect through struggle, where every conversation turns into who has it worse. You share something you're going through, and instead of being met with space, you're met with a story that raises the stakes, something bigger, something heavier, something that shifts the focus. And I understand that sometimes people share their experiences to relate, to say, I see you. But there's a difference between relating and redirecting. There's a difference between connection and competition. And you can feel it when it happens. Because instead of feeling heard, you feel overshadowed. And sometimes, if we're being honest, you can feel when the struggle being shared doesn't fully match the weight it's being presented with. So the question becomes, why do people do this? Why does sympathy feel like something to seek? Why does struggle sometimes become a way to connect, or even a way to be seen? And part of it comes down to something very human. People want to feel acknowledged. They want to feel cared about. They want to know that someone is paying attention. And in a world where attention is constant, but connection isn't, struggle becomes one of the fastest ways to receive it. Because when you're doing well, people may celebrate you briefly. But when you're struggling, people pause, they lean in, they ask questions, they respond. And for some, that becomes a learned behavior. And then there's the social media layer, because platforms are built on engagement, and engagement responds to emotion, especially concern, worry, urgency. So now you have an environment where sharing something vague but heavy can bring immediate attention, immediate reactions, immediate validation, without requiring vulnerability, without requiring explanation. And that creates a pattern where the feeling of being seen becomes tied to the act of presenting struggle, even if that struggle isn't fully processed or even fully real in the way it's being expressed. But here's the part we have to be honest about. Not everyone who shares vaguely is being manipulative, and not everyone who tells a bigger story is trying to compete. Sometimes people don't have the language to explain what they're going through. Sometimes they don't feel safe sharing details. Sometimes they start to open up and then pull back. And sometimes people relate the only way they know how, by bringing up their own experiences. So this isn't about labeling people, it's about recognizing patterns, because there is a difference between someone who is reaching out and someone who is performing distress, and that difference matters. And it also matters how we respond, because constantly pouring into someone who never engages beyond the initial post can become draining. Constantly trying to be heard in conversations where your experience is being overshadowed can become exhausting. So, part of this conversation isn't just about why people seek sympathy, it's about how we set boundaries around how we give it. Because empathy should be real, but it should also be reciprocal. Support should be offered, but not endlessly poured into spaces where it's not being received. So maybe the real question isn't just why people drama bond or why sympathy feels like something to seek. Maybe the question is, what are we actually looking for when we share? Is it support? Is it connection? Or is it acknowledgement? And are we being clear about that? Not just with others, but with ourselves. Because once you understand what you're really seeking, you stop asking for it in ways that don't actually fulfill it. Thank you for sitting in the bowl with me. Now let's come back to the surface. Stay classy, stay curious, stay ever evolving. The Fishbowl with Jade is available on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcast, and YouTube.